All right, good Friday morning to you. John Lynch was just on KMBR with the 49ers update, and I thought that it was relatively substantive. We have some things to talk about, especially regarding the return of Dre Greenlaw and also the return of Ricky Pearsall. Lynch confirmed that the plan is for Greenlaw to return at some point this season. In the past, we'd heard mid-season floated around. I know that's not a very specific date. I look at the 49ers schedule and they just so happen to have a bye week right at midseason, right on that Halloween weekend. And I think that around that time, it just makes sense to think about, okay, how are some of these returns going to escalate? Now, in the case of Dre Greenlaw, he tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl, which was already borderline mid-February last year. Achilles typically takes a little bit longer than ACL recovery, too. The fact that happened in the very last game, as far back as you could possibly get, of the previous season, that means that this is going to dig far into the 2024 season inevitably. So I would say circle back, check in around that bye week. The impatience is, to be honest, fairly ridiculous considering the fact that this was an Achilles in February. I will say that I see Dre around the locker room frequently, likes to shoot hoops on the basket in there. And he's also been around the practice field, obviously not practicing for the 49ers since he's still on pup, but I'm reminded every single time he's a lefty when he plays catch with Fred Warner before the 49ers really get things started out on practice. I think guys are trying to avoid the practice field if they don't have to be out there this week, since it's been 98 to 100 degrees. Could be in the upper 90s for kickoff on Sunday. It's going to be very likely the hottest game in Levi's Stadium history. Other update, Ricky Pearsall. He's been working off on the side. John Lynch today on KMBR said, quote, "He'll be making plays for us," end quote. Lynch went on to talk about how good of a fit Pearsall is in this offense. We have yet to see Ricky Pearsall play in an actual game. We've seen him out at training camp practice. From day one, it was very clear that he moves very, very smoothly. That was back in rookie minicamp. I remember how good he looked from the very start in rookie minicamp, just as far as the movement ability. We saw the same thing on tape at both Arizona State and Florida. And then once he actually got involved in training camp, coming off the hamstring that occurred during the open period in between OTAs and camp, he caught a couple deep passes, including one from Brock Purdy that was really nice at the start of an 11-on-11 session in training camp. And I look back on that moment and I'm like, okay, wait, this is a staple of the 49ers offense this year. Back then, we thought it was a one-off deep pass, but I do recognize that a lot of my reporting from training camp said, oh, Brock Purdy's throwing it, airing it out. He's throwing it deep. I figured that the 49ers were just working on that kind of stuff so that Purdy could stay as accurate as he was last year. He completed 60% of his passes that traveled 20 more yards down the air, but 20 or more yards in the air downfield. But it seems to be just more of a fixture of the 49ers offense this year because, and Lynch, I think, illustrated it perfectly this morning on KMBR. He said that opponents are dropping 8 into coverage to populate areas where the 49ers have typically tried to generate yards after the catch with shorter passes and intermediate passes. Well, because there are more men in coverage, and those men in coverage are attacking the areas where Yak has typically started, a.k.a. the middle of the field. Brock Purdy has had to go elsewhere. There are a couple options of going elsewhere. You could either go shorter with less of a chance of Yak because there's more defenders swarming, or you can just throw it over the top of the defense. And Purdy's been throwing it over the top of the defense. I think Pearsall can be good at that when he returns for the 49ers. I think Pearsall can also be good at some of the timing routes that San Francisco will inevitably return to when teams sag back to take away the deep throws. So it's all cyclical, and that's why it's important that your quarterback can do everything. Also important for your receivers to be able to do everything. And I think that Ricky Pearsall, on tape in college, he showed that kind of versatile skill set for the 49ers. A lot of people, when they first picked him, said that this is going to be a slot guy. He's a lot more than a slot guy. He has the size to play on the outside. He has the movement ability to play at any of these wide receiver positions. And I think it's going to come in handy for the 49ers. So Lynch, like Shanahan, said that Pearsall is really close, that the activation is, at least to open the practice window, is going to be coming soon. No specific date on it, but again, he said he'll be making plays for us. And it was just yesterday or 2 days ago that Kyle Shanahan said that Ricky Pearsall is really close. Speaking of the receiver room, somebody asked about Brandon Ayuk on KMBR. One of the two hosted. I forgot it was Murph or, but he said, quote, just keep watching. He's just going to get better. I think you'll see the stats come. At the end of the year, it will all balance out. He's just getting going, end quote. Lynch said that he thought that Ayuk was getting better on a weekly basis. I mean, we saw the nicest catch that we had seen so far this season from Brandon Ayuk last week with a diving grab against the New England Patriots. I would say that the grace period is close to ending at this point, just as far as, well, what we expected as far as a slow start, because Ayuk did miss training camp. Well, he's had a month now. So that's a month full of practice, 4 games. The calendar's turned to October. In fact, when this whole thing started, I thought, okay, Brandon Ayuk is probably not going to look like himself until about October, because he needs the equivalent of training camp time, that block of time at practice, to work himself back into the mix, not necessarily into shape, but into form, into timing with Brock Purdy, just into a feel for the game that's not going to happen when you're working out in your backyard. And I think that time is close to now. It's October 4th. 49ers are going to play the Arizona Cardinals on October 6th. And if Ayuk is truly progressing the way that the 49ers felt that he would after missing training camp, October could be his month. John Lynch talked about Buster Posey today. Obviously, the San Francisco Giants hired a president of baseball operations that's a former player who's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Lynch is in charge of the 49ers. He's a former player who is in the Hall of Fame. And one of the better quotes that I've seen, John Lynch on Buster Posey during his appearance on KMBR. Quote, there's a montage of him walking off the field before the umpire called the third strike. I think that's the most gangster thing I've ever seen, end quote from John Lynch. He ended up citing Greg Papa, who has compared Buster Posey to Brock Purdy. They both have the BP initial. I just realized that. Brock Purdy and Buster Posey, same calm demeanor, bring a lot of stability to the proceedings on the field. Posey obviously did that when he was throwing guys out from behind home plate when he was in uniform with the Giants. Obviously, people are going to be talking about Posey, Lynch, maybe even John Elway, who's an executive after his playing career for the Denver Broncos. But the Posey-Purdy comparison really, really sticks out to me. And it's something that I've, just tangentially thought of before, but now that John Lynch brought it up, and I guess that Greg Papa has brought it up before because Lynch credited Greg Papa, I think he's onto something there. There is something about even-keeled, stable leadership on the field that a team in any sport really needs. And I think that you go to the Golden State Warriors and they have it with Steph Curry. I mean, he's been the same guy through and through for years, and he's obviously a superstar. But in terms of what the Giants had when they won their 3 World Series and what the 49ers have as they're making a bid for a Super Bowl championship, it is Brock Purdy with the 49ers, and it was Buster Posey for the Giants. And it's no surprise that the San Francisco Giants have hired Buster Posey to be in that executive role that John Lynch now has. It's going to be all about, I've said it before, it's going to be all about delegation of duties. You can't do it all yourself if you're Buster Posey, especially since you don't have a whole lot of experience in the regard of scouting and running a baseball team. But you do have experience in terms of leadership because he's already done it on the actual football field. And leadership principles carry over from the football field to the front office. That's how John Lynch has been so successful with the 49ers. There's a look at Purdy. There's the quarter season stat check coming out with a defensive quarter season stat check on the San Francisco Standard that's going to be out a little bit later today. But if you want to take a look at that offensive one, it's all over my Twitter, how Brock Purdy and the 49ers offense stack up. More interesting stuff from John Lynch today on Tatum Bethune. This is the rookie linebacker out of Florida State. He said that early in training camp, Tatum Bethune showed the 49ers that he had what it took to play the Mike linebacker position. Now, the Mike linebacker position is the one with the radio in the helmet, the green dot. Any helmet with a green dot on it has a radio in it. There's only one allowed on the field at a time. Quarterback has it on offense. The Mike linebacker has it on defense. Fred Warner has the radio in his helmet on defense. Fred Warner is dealing with an ankle injury. He's been unable to practice on Wednesday and Thursday, although he was out in full pads and a helmet working off on the side yesterday. And Kyle Shanahan said that even without practice, he's one of the guys that can play on Sunday if his ankle improves enough. If Warner does not play, this is interesting. John Lynch said that Tatum Bethune might get some snaps on Sunday against the Cardinals. This is a guy who was a violent player at Florida State. Not the fastest player, but an instinctive player who studies a lot of tape, who obviously very quickly showed the 49ers that he could wear the helmet with the radio in it to direct other guys around. Take the words from defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen, get the play call from him, the instructions in the radio, and then relay it further down the line to all the other players in the huddle. Or if you're running a hurry up, or if the offense is running a hurry up, then you've got to be able to do it outside the huddle. A lot of it's nonverbal. A lot of it also is turning around, barking some orders, but you've got to be ready on the fly. The 49ers apparently saw enough from Tatum Bethune in training camp to say, hey, this guy could be a Mike linebacker whenever Fred Warner is unavailable. So Lynch said that Tatum Bethune might get a few reps for the 49ers. I promised I'd show you guys this. The new Caltrain. This was cool. I've taken this down to Santa Clara a couple days. Remember how bad the old ones used to be, the old diesel ones? The new ones are all electric, and it literally completely changed the ride. You even have tables, as you can see up there. I could also eat on the way. That's hummus from Mountain View. Really, the restaurant's called Hummus. It's a Turkish spot. And there's the watch, how to show off the watch. So you can see right here, nice blue watch. My wife gave it to me. So Caltrain, it's sweet. It really is. I guess they made the trains in Switzerland, and I promised the shout out to those of you on the peninsula. It does feel like Switzerland. These new electric trains completely change the way that things work. You know, I could write articles like this on the way. That's the best part. I don't have to sit in traffic on 101. I could write 49ers content for you while I'm headed down to Santa Clara, and I think that's a big win as far as productivity goes. We're going to answer questions for a few minutes, have a nice little morning chat, because the 49ers have reached Friday of this hot week in the Bay Area. Go ahead and check out this article, and then I'll be back on the train today, writing another one on my way down. We're going to have the defensive look at the 49ers, the defensive, I guess, stat check. We're quarter of the way through the season. I really think that the next two games for San Francisco are going to set the tone for this 2024 season. Divisional matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, divisional matchup on Thursday against the Seattle Seahawks. Right now, the 49ers are 2-2. They could leave this. Well, they could leave it 2-4 if they lose twice, but they can also leave it 4-2. If they leave it 4-2 with a division lead heading into that really tough stretch of non-divisional games, but really interesting matchups with the bye week coming up at the end of October, that'd be a start that the 49ers like. And it's well within their reach here over the next 2 weeks, especially, you know, with Seattle looking so beaten up defensively. We'll see how many guys they return by Thursday. But the Seahawks have to play like 3 games in 10 or 11 days because they have the extra disadvantage of having played on Monday night, right? They played Monday at Detroit. So that's more games condensed into a very short window for the Seattle Seahawks, who play on Sunday and then, of course, on Thursday against the 49ers. All right, time for the Q&A on this beautiful morning. Gerald says, if Fred can't go, the D-line has to step up and take over the game to protect the linebackers. I do think that the 49ers linebackers, without Fred Warner, there has been a significant drop-off there, but I will compliment them by saying that, and this is a compliment to Warner's leadership as well, after he went down at halftime in the game against the Patriots, the linebackers held up a good level of play for most of the second half. The first big busted play was the 50-yard gain that we saw for the Patriots, which was in garbage time already. But it was too bad because the 49ers were only allowing 2.8 yards per play before that play, which would have been the lowest mark of the entire Shanahan-Lynch era. Unfortunately, that got blown up by the 50-yard gain. I think Demetrius Flanagan-Foles got turned around, caught up in the middle, and the Patriots were able to run a kind of a short little leak out there to, I don't know if it was a receiver or running back on the play, but it was a big gain at a time when it wasn't going to affect the final result, but it did affect the final statistics of the game. And if the 49ers don't have Fred Warner, then they're going to have to make sure they avoid similar breakdowns on Sunday against the Cardinals. This is a good take right here. How do I feel about the defense moving forward? Feels like the Cardinals are a good matchup to see any necessary development. I would agree with that. I'm going to cover the defense in the big stat analysis on the San Francisco Standard today. But yesterday I had the look at the 49ers' full performance, offense, defense, and special teams in terms of rank by expected points added per play. 2023 versus 2024, as you can see, the offense from number 1 to number 6, passing offense still at number 3. That's the highest rated component of the 49ers team. The defense was number 10 last season, and it has begun number 10 this season. But there's still a lot of movement with each game because the sample is relatively small. For example, the 49ers were at number 24 before they played the Patriots right here defensively, and it shot up to number 10. So one game vaulted them up 14 spots. It's going to be harder and harder to move that far as the sample grows, but this is still a very flexible number. Last year, I always talked about the biggest weakness of the 49ers last year, even worse than special teams, was the run defense. Special teams ranked number 25, run defense ranked number 26. That has to be better. I think that the run defense needs to be at least number 16. It needs to be mediocre. And so far, they've been, with that outing against the Patriots, they got themselves into the top half, so that's good. The defense needs to continue stopping the run to a reasonable degree to fuel the pass rush moving forward. That's going to be the key. I think if they do that, the pass defense will get better. I think they're already getting better. I think it's just a matter of finding the right alignments under the new defensive coordinator, Nick Sorensen, and that will help the number 10 overall ranking. I thought last year the 49ers were playing with fire, despite the fact that they had the number 1 offense. I thought that they were playing with fire by having the number 10 defense. I think that to be a sure, nothing is sure, but to be the odds-on Super Bowl favorite, you need to be top 5, both offensively and defensively. So I outlined as a goal for the defense, get back to the top 5. You can win without a top 5 defense. You could win with a number 15 defense, but Brock Purdy would have to be an absolute world beater, which maybe he is. But to be safe, to give yourself as good of a shot as possible, you got to get that defense back up into top 5. And we'll see. Like I said, October is going to set the tone for so many of these things regarding the 49ers. The entire season's tone is going to be set in this month. It was just a warm-up in September. That was preseason extended in September. Now the real football is going to be played, and we'll see if the 49ers can get that defensive rank up, and obviously offense too. They're going to want to find a little bit more efficiency, even without Christian McCaffrey currently available. They still want to get to that number 1 spot. Will they get there? Well, depends on if Jaden Daniels and the Commanders cool off a little bit, but the 49ers have started well offensively. Could still be better. And the 49ers have started. We'll see where it's at defensively. Weeks 2 and 3 weren't good. So I'm saying October is going to determine a whole hell of a lot for San Francisco. Ready to move to more questions. As Davey says, it's Brocktober. It's a funny name, Davey. 49ers used to be top 3 in stopping the run. Yes, they did. That was back in 2023, though. No, 22. 23, they dropped from number 2 to number 26. So it's been a couple seasons now. David asks, do you think Mason will get run into the ground? It's hard to expect a player to go 20 plus physical carries per game every single week. One thing, though, is I don't think they anticipate Jordan Mason having to do this all year. They expect Christian McCaffrey to return. And B, Jordan Mason is young. He doesn't have that much tread on the tires. Obviously, hasn't been carrying a lot for the 49ers up until this year. And then even at the college level, there was a lot of time that he spent as a backup to Jahmyr Gibbs, who's now with the Detroit Lions. So Mason is relatively fresh, and this is a temporary assignment. You have to remember, they are expecting, regardless of what you hear on the internet, wild speculation, they are expecting Christian McCaffrey to return this season. I have seen Wishnowsky run a fake punt. It came against the Seattle Seahawks last year, but it was called back due to a penalty. But yes, I have seen Mitch Wishnowsky run a fake punt. I don't think the 49ers need to run too much trickery to beat teams. They are the most talented team in football. They have one of the best offenses in football, and we'll see if they can end up fielding one of the best defenses in football. It's usually what you do, a fake punt, when you're desperate to try to gain a possession against the team that overmatches you, like the Rams did back in week 3 against the 49ers. Tyler likes the hat. Shout out. We got to straighten it out. Shout out to the San Francisco Fire Department, Station 13, right by the Transamerica Pyramid. That's where I got it. Which team has the strongest rushing offense in this matchup? Well, let's look at it by EPA. That's a good question that you ask. I think the 49ers are running the ball very well to the right this year, which is something I've gone over. I want to see where Arizona ranks exactly. But the 49ers overall EPA, it's the number 14 run offense. I know people are going to be all up in arms about that, but I think a lot of the red zone struggles have contributed to that. They haven't been great running inside the red zone. That's when it matters most. So EPA combines all of those things. 49ers, well, now they're number 13 after Thursday Night Football, after the adjustments. The 49ers have moved up a spot in rushing offense. The Arizona Cardinals are 22. So it's 13 and 22. I could show you guys the ranks on Ben Baldwin's site. This is rushing EPA. 49ers right here, 13th. Washington is number 1. Washington's doing everything really well. Baltimore 2, Detroit 3. 49ers 13, Arizona 22. Yes, Pearsall absolutely has a role on this team in 2024. I began the John Lynch update by saying that. I know you probably came late, so I'm not going to give you a hard time. But quote, John Lynch, quote, he'll be making plays for us, end quote. We saw the role that Pearsall would have during the very limited time in training camp. He caught a lot of passes, including that deep one from Brock Purdy. He's a versatile receiver. If you're a good, versatile receiver, you have a role on this football team. Fernando is feeling concerned about the special teams unit. Well, the problem is, and then I have another question from Art, how do I see them making corrections on special teams? There have been issues on all parts of special teams, right? They couldn't block the punt block attempt from the Minnesota Vikings. So you got to clean that up. They were slow on third down or fourth down fake punt defense against the Rams. So that has to be cleaned up. They saw Isaac Guerrero fumble the football on the kickoff return, and that was last week against the Patriots. They saw Jacob Cowing muff the punt against the Vikings. So those are all different things. You fix those things, and that's how you fix special teams. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Time for me to go get some breakfast, head down on the new train. That's going to be fun, the new Caltrain. And I mean, these things are so cool. This used to be the most torturous ride. I would actively avoid it. But now that it feels like I'm in Switzerland on a Swiss train heading down to Levi's, actually a good way to beat the traffic. And you could eat on the way too. Plus, I could show off my watch as I make the video. That was from Hummus in Mountain View, Turkish place. Really good. There's the watch. That's how we'll end the show. Everybody, take care.